Good evening, everyone. I will call to order our June 23rd, 2026 regular meeting of the Board of Directors. Welcome and thank you to those attending our meeting in person, joining us over Zoom, and those staying informed by watching our recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the back of the room on the table and turn it in to Board Secretary Kim Coven, seated at the board table on the end to my left. Comments will take place during a designated community comment portion of our agenda. At this time, I want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the board table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Horn Frazier, Eastham, and Williams. To my left, we have Vice President Abraham, Directors Finch and Lingo, and Board Secretary Coven. First up on our agenda is approval for tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda for this evening.
Second.
Thank you. Secretary Coven, where do you vote?
Online voting is open.
I'm a yes. It didn't pop up.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to community comment for tonight. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you plan to speak about. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those which include hate speech and that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limits. All community comment directed at non-agenda and agenda items will take place at the beginning of the meeting and will be limited to 4 minutes per speaker and 5 minutes with speakers who has the assistance of an interpreter. Speaker's time limit will be displayed on the iPad on the ledge in front of Board Secretary Ms. Coven, and an alarm will sound once the speaker's time has expired. The initial comment period will be limited to 1 hour, and remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, will take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. Any individual who does not abide by these stated rules or otherwise disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave and/or referred to law enforcement. And our first speaker for tonight is Michael Parrott.
Sorry, just 1 minute. I'm just going to orient towards the community because they've got a copy. But okay. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Parrott. I live in Coralville. 2 weeks ago, I spoke about financial health. Since then, I found the district's old financial health scorecards, which are available online, and they contain 14 different grades across different metrics, including targets that the district aims to achieve. So what I did is I took these report cards all the way back to 2014, and I assembled every report card by year into a large table, which you have in front of you. Every row is a different financial health metric, and every column is a year. Green is above target, yellow is near the targets, and red means that we're below targets. Row 3, I'd like to highlight row 3. We'll walk through that as an example. It's days net cash in the general fund. Our district target is 90 days. You can see we're at 84 and 88 days in 2016 and 2017, and then it deteriorated very sharply. 3 things to highlight. Number 1, these are good metrics. They gave us early warning signs in 2019 that problems were to come. Number 2, second, after several red years, the district stopped publishing this report in 2023 and 2024, which is why it's kind of in that white triangle on the page. And third, I'm very skeptical of the 2025 number. It's an unaudited number, and PFM's recent analysis showed 30 to 35 days. and all the liquidity issues we're having now would not be indicative of having 76 days of cash on hand. So second, let's talk about why these targets exist. So that if you go to slide 2, I've got on the left-hand side of the page PFM's financial forecast for the coming months in 2027. This is the amount of cash we'll have by months in 2027. The red line is the projection from PFM. The blue line is the projection if we had 60 days cash on hand, and green is if we had 90 days cash on hand. So you'll see those stay away from the danger zone effectively. But here's the problem. On the left, you'll see cash is very seasonal, and there always is a trough. On the right, you can see the solution. We need a healthy target that's built from 3 layers. First is an operational foundation that we should have 20 days of cash at all times to keep the district running and make payroll. Second is a seasonality buffer. I'd recommend 24 days to cover seasonality and cover us from the peaks to the troughs. And third, we need to add a volatility buffer on top of our cash targets. At a minimum, 16 days would get us to the 60-day target, and if you use a higher amount of 46, it'll get us to a 90-day target. It's a very reasonable thing for the school district to achieve. So the question is, can we get there? So if you go to slide 3, we'll show the historical days net cash for Iowa City School District over time. We've done it. I believe that we can get there. There's 2 reasons. Number 1 is we've done it before. From 2016 to 2019, we were above 60 days of cash. Number 2, other districts are there today. The average of our peers has been between 85 and 100 days of cash. Ever since then, if they can do it, we can do it too. And that was a little bit dense, so I want to share a simpler analogy for the group. Think of cash reserves like altitude. You're flying a plane. If you want to fly a plane 10 feet off the ground like a Blue Angel, it requires having everything go perfectly. You need very strong controls on the plane, and you need an elite pilot flying the plane. We're not flying fighter jets as a district, we're running schools. And our Top Gun, who's now here, has a lot of work to do and is very busy. So with that, I'd really like the school district to restore a very serious cash reserve and target 90 days. Until you do, we should be reporting out against this monthly. And once we do reach 90 days, we should have a 3-month curing period where we allow ourselves to make sure we can hold that target. And we still do monthly reporting even beyond the limit of that. Finally, and then only with that, with board approval, we then switch to, say, quarterly reporting on cash. And I think if we do that, we can get to a healthy cash position. We can avoid borrowing which incurs costs for the district. It takes time away from our attention, and we can get there. And we have the metrics in place. We just need to use the guidance system that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Angie Rogers.
I'm gonna wait till they get that. Okay, good evening. My name is Angie Rogers and I live in Coralville. Tonight I want to present a timeline established by documents recently obtained through a community member's public records request. These records raise serious questions about what district leadership knew regarding the fiscal year 23 audit, when they knew it, and what they communicated to the board and bondholders. To set the stage, we all know that the fiscal year 23 audit was due March 31st, 2024. From these records, it appears that Mr. Moran started his employment with the district in September of 2024. On October 8th, Mr. Moran sent Mr. Degner, Ramey, and Kurth a consolidated list of major issues holding up the audit. He reported that balance sheets were not in balance, work papers did not tie to the general ledger, the financial statements were not properly prepared, work papers contained errors, and documentation and organization were poor. The following day, Mr. Kurth sent Mr. Degner and Mr. Ramey an email titled "Distilled Message plus Rating Withdrawal." Mr. Kurth's proposed message to the board said the audit was progressing, that the remaining work involved finalizing and verifying financial statements, and that the district anticipated receiving the audit report in December or January. Approximately 30 minutes later, Mr. Degner approved the message, writing, quote, "That looks great to me. Please send it to the board and copy Chase and I." End of quote. Roughly 15 minutes later, Mr. Kurth sent that distilled message to the board. It is undeniable that the internal warning sent to district leadership by Mr. Moran and the message sent to the board by Mr. Kurth are materially different. Further, October 16th, Mr. Kurth responded to a bondholder that the district was working through the final stages of the audit and informed Mr. Degner and Mr. Ramey that this was his standard response to bondholders. The documents produced do not contain a written objection from either Mr. Degner or Mr. Ramey to this communication. From November 2024 through March 2025, bondholders continued requesting updates on that audit. By March 2025, audit work was revealing significant issues and additional testing was scheduled for May of 2025. Now remember, back in October 2024, the message to the board and bondholders was that the audit was being finalized. Fiscal year 2023 audit was finally presented to the board in September 2025, approximately 18 months after it was due. Why do these emails and why does this timeline matter? These emails reveal a fundamental gap between the audit's actual status and what was communicated to the board and bondholders. These materially different messages to district leadership and the board seem to reflect a deliberate failure of district leadership to provide the board with the full and accurate information necessary to govern. Board members should ask themselves, what if you had received Mr. Moran's email instead of Mr. Kurth's? Would you have authorized the same spending and financial commitments? Would this district be in the same financial condition today? Financial cleanup is not accountability. It is one, if no one is held responsible, the message will be clear. District leadership may conceal material facts related to the district, mislead the governing body, and face no consequences. The question is no longer simply what happened. It is whether you will act. How do you want your service to be remembered? As board members who tolerated being given incomplete or misleading information, or as board members who confronted the facts, demanded the truth, and imposed meaningful accountability. You were elected by this community to serve as fiduciaries of this district, to safeguard taxpayer dollars, protect the interests of students and staff, and govern the district as a whole. Your obligation is to the public, not to district leadership. It's time to fulfill that obligation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Bill Ackerman.
Good evening. I want to thank the two members on the board who voted correctly a couple of weeks ago on things. I'm very disgusted with the way finances have gone the last few years. It appears to be just miscommunication or perhaps just not knowing what's going on between different parties. I noticed this evening coming up here, you left the old building to move to this building here. Much more fancy, very, very expensive. Is it necessary? I have to question that. Recently, I heard about a new sign at West High School. The old sign had been there for many years. Money was spent to replace that sign. Was it necessary? In my opinion, no. Recently, there was a $500,000 payment to the state of Iowa for a fine for a late payment of something that should have been on time. Total waste of money. No accountability for that. And it goes on and on and on. I'm just disappointed in the way, not so much the board, but the leadership of this district has handled things. It needs to change. You owe it to the taxpayers. You owe it to the citizens of this community. You need to quit spending money needlessly on things you want but don't need. And that goes for salaries, starting at the top. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Emily Campbell.
Good evening, I'm Emily Campbell. I'm a parent in the district, and I went to Iowa City Schools. I'm just following up on Michael's comment regarding a monthly financial report and that the reports should be presented to the board on a monthly basis. This isn't new information. At the School Budget Review Committee meeting on June 9th, the SBRC followed up on its previous requirement that the school district submit monthly financial reports to the SBRC. The district did not follow through with the SBRC requirements prior to that meeting, and it is now on track to continue with that trend. The last financial report was presented to the board over a month ago on May 12th and reflected financial information from March 30th. While the balances reflected on March 30th may have been accurate, we don't know, there was information that from previous periods within that report that were not, and the information was not substantive. There were funds missing from the financial report. The next board meeting is scheduled for July 21st. That's 2.5 months from the May 12th meeting. As far as I can tell, there's nothing on the agenda for today's meeting to have a financial report with updated information. Please take the SBRC requirements seriously and follow through with our commitment to the state and to the public, to the teachers and to the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Katie Linder.
Good evening. My name is Katie Linder. I'm a parent in the Iowa City Community School District, and I live here in Iowa City. I wrote down some comments tonight, and I'll read some of them, but mostly I just want to communicate that I just feel so disappointed by how this financial situation has been handled, and I think specifically from the communication side of things, this board and this district must do better and be more transparent about what's going on. Anybody who's paying attention, I think it's fair to say, feels a bit duped by the emails that we receive, the lack of communication, the messaging just like, hey, it's getting better, we're working on these things, it's not as bad as it seems. And then we get to read in the paper, you know, comments by the SBRC and the State Board of Education that is just kind of smacking the district down and giving us a heavy dose of reality. And so when we have public comment in these meetings that say, this isn't actually a crisis, we shouldn't be worrying about these things, we're not taking it, it doesn't come across that you're taking it seriously. And then we have to go elsewhere for information, including in these public meetings. Community members are making public information requests because the information is not forthcoming. It doesn't feel true in a lot of cases. And I don't understand how we move forward from this without more transparency. We can continue to call for accountability, but really we need to be transparent about what is happening, what has happened, and that's the only way that we can move forward from this. And so looking at coverage from the Board of Education meeting, you know, that happened a couple days before our 2024 audit dropped. I'm curious what they would have said if they would have seen that document before they had their meeting. Their comments were already damning enough about how embarrassing it is, how as superintendents they would have been fired in this scenario. I just challenge this board to tell us what's going on, regain trust in the community. We shouldn't have to learn about these things in the newspaper or by scanning and going through emails ourselves. We have community members that are providing analysis of the financial information because we're not getting it from you. So please do better, and if you can't, it might be time to step aside.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Maka Pilcher Hyatt.
Hi, I'm Maka Pilcher-Hayek. I sat on the board, and I'm a parent of one graduate and 2 students still in the district. I live in Iowa City. I just want to draw the board's attention to Policy 207, Board of Directors Legal Counsel. I know this was addressed earlier, but I was not able to attend that meeting, and I know it's an ongoing conversation. The policy number 207 is addresses when there's a conflict of interest between the board members and the superintendent. We are in an unprecedented situation. I think everyone, I would hope everyone understands that this is not like anything that's happened before. Conflicts of interest abound. It's a very sensitive time for our district to make sure that you all have appropriate representation. I've mentioned it before. My husband, who's also an attorney, came in and mentioned it before. You've got a lot of very qualified attorneys very concerned about the representation the board members are receiving. So when you're looking at Policy 207, now is really the time for this board to seek very good counsel. And I understand that there's only 2 board members that are willing to push back. At least that's what we've seen as the public. But that tells me that you're probably going to stick with the same counsel giving you advice on this matter. I accept that. I would just really ask good questions to your counsel about how it's possible for them to represent the interests of the district and not represent right now the interests of the board members who are adversely poised to central administration. Again, I think that that's plain as day to pretty much everyone reading the facts. So I think that's really important for that to be reflected in Policy 207. Also, we've addressed this before too, that there's gatekeeping language about who can contact council. I'm aware of the history of that. I've been involved in the board politics and administration guidance for 7 or 15 years. I know where it came from. Again, we are in an unprecedented situation, and there are a lot of community members that had reason to only really have faith in directors Finch and Lingo for obvious reasons, at least obvious to the public. So we were really hoping that they would not have any kind of issue directly contacting council. I don't feel that this language would empower a board member who's been doing the hard work and leading, not as the president or the vice president, but really leading the board and leading the district through this change. We really need people like Finch and Lingo to not have to worry about having obstacles in their way to getting timely answers from council, to have to worry about whether or not they shouldn't be asking the question because they might have to pay a fee. These are concerns that you all know exist, and I think it's really important, again, to address these as you're looking at Policy 207 so that it can be more effective. We need way more protection than we've ever needed before by legal counsel. And I don't think that it's possible for you to get it in the current situation where we still have, you still have Matt Degner and Chase Ramey employed by the district. Obviously, there are adverse positions at play. So please, the community is going to be following this too. We beg you to address the situation in Policy 207. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes community comment. And before we get to the consent agenda, did directors have questions from this review of bills this cycle? Hearing none, are there any items directors would like to pull from tonight's consent agenda?
I'd like to pull the personnel agenda.
Anything else? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 4, the personnel agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to the personnel agenda that was pulled from tonight's consent agenda.
No comments, just want to vote.
I was going to pull the same thing, and we'll just go on the record that I will be abstaining from voting due to a perceived conflict since I have relatives on that agenda. All right, is there a motion to approve the personnel agenda? Or I'm sorry, are there any questions or discussion outside of that? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve tonight's personnel agenda?
I move to approve agenda item 4. Is that the motion you wish, President?
Is there a second?
A second.
All right. Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with directors Abraham, Eastham, Horn, Frazier, and Williams voting yea. Directors Finch and Lingo voting nay, and Director Malone abstaining.
Thank you. Next up is our policy review. Director Lingo, I know you chair policy and governance, so I will turn it over to you.
So this kind of sound funky, a little bit funky, because we have policy. We start with the 700 series, and then we will go back to them with policy primers, because we got a large batch of policy primers that just focused on the 700 series. So specifically, to start with the 700 policies, that these were some of the things that we talked about last time. to get changes made, transfer of funds. We worked, there was some change to that, and I believe it ended up going along with federal guidance on the verbiage that is supposed to be at the end of the transfers of funds. Credit and procurement cards, there was language added for the pre-authorization emergencies. They can, if a person is in the field and runs into a problem where there's an emergency, they can use the purchasing card, but they have to talk to their administrator or the CFO, whichever one is quickest. I'm guessing it'll probably be their administrator. That language is added specifically to address issues like the City High Band and Choir, and no fault of the district or of their own, got stuck in Chicago, and so that way they can get food when there's an emergency. Then the procurement card manual, emergency language, yeah, we just already went through that. Language added under the purchase online, so information should never be saved to online sites. In the second paragraph, removed the Record Keeping and Reconciliation Committee. The 207 Board of Directors Legal Counsel, there was some disagreement there, and it is now set aside. 303.2, Administrative Qualifications, Recruitment and Appointment. We did some discussion on this, and ultimately we're going to send it to legal to write it up with our ideas and thoughts, so it's a little more coherent. But the thought process is to put up to 2 school board members to participate in the interview committees of executive cabinet level positions. School board members will be selected through our board policy 200.3R1. And if any legal issue or challenge shall arise from the hiring process, that board member will recuse, those 2 board members, or 1 or 2, will recuse themselves from any board action or anything like that. And I came up with the number 2 because it seemed like 5 people voting would be better than 4 people voting if there was some sort of legal action or board action needed. And everybody was good with that on the committee. So then we found some other verbiage issues. We're like, let's just give it to Allers and let them make it so it's defensible in a court of law and defensible as a policy. So then we moved on to policy primers. There are 14 in the 700 series. Most of them, like 701.2, transfer of funds, 701.3, financial records, 701.5, fiscal management, 704.2, debt management, 704.3, all being changed to to reflect federal and state laws. There's a little bit of different color coding. Some of them, if it's color coded green, that is a recommendation that comes from in-house. If it is blue, that is from IASB as a policy primer, and typically those go through Allers, the law firm. Then we had, again, 705.1R1, purchasing and bidding, and 705.1R2, purchasing purchasing, won't go into the other ones, but again, updating the current federal standards. We added a policy 705.4 for expenditures for a public purchase. There's a new one, 705.5, federal awards compliance, and outlines the district's responsibilities in managing federal funds, including maintaining financial systems, internal controls, procurement standards, and accurate reporting, ensuring compliance with federal regulations. It also requires the proper documentation, disclosure of violations, retention of records to ensure transparency, accountability, and proper use of federal awards, and I believe that was 5 years. Then 706.4, time and effort reporting. That's make sure that we have well-documented records of employee time and ensure the salaries and benefits are charged to federal programs are reasonable and properly allocated. Then we have 707.1, which is the presentation of publication of financial information, updated for federal and state law guidance. 708, care, maintenance, and disposal of school district records. That was specifically updated for nuance regarding the child nutrition program, where they have to keep the actual paper records and can't convert them to digital. And then technology and data security, the policy removed language that does not rise to the level of board governance. If anybody from the committee has anything to add, feel free. Otherwise,
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Director Lingo.
You're welcome.
Next up is the discussion items, and the first one is the interim Human Resources Director, Superintendent Degner. Sorry.
That's okay. Yes, we talked about it at the last meeting, and we had an initial posting. We got some feedback on the job description, and there was a couple questions from board members. So the takeaway from the conversation last time was at the director level that it was going to be interim, and we were going to run a internal process for that with the external and internal posting, but it was going to be managed by the district. So just with the questions we were getting, we thought it was important to have that conversation, make sure the board was still on the same page with how we proceed there. So kind of the floor is yours on that to provide any direction you want to for us.
So just to clarify what you said, it is a search that is open.
Yes.
An open search being run by our
Team.
team.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what's the timeline for the search? Because July 1 is a week from tomorrow. So what are we looking at for getting someone on board?
Well, it's likely delayed now since we brought it back to the board table. So,
Yeah.
Typically we would have had a posting for either a week or 2 weeks. Not knowing if there'd be any changes to that tonight, it'll likely delay us into the beginning part of July. The alternative would be to appoint some type of an interim, from inside the organization that we could have in place before July. But right now, the direction we had from the board was to have that posting.
Okay, or we could hire an external consulting firm like we did with the CFO.
Yeah, we could
position,
look
too.
into pursuing that as well,
Yeah.
if that's what you guys wanted to do, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, it served us well for that purpose, and there may be similar issues that are encountered, so I would be in favor of going that route.
Are you saying, Director Finch, that you'd be interested in having a search firm help identify candidates to hire as an interim for, say, a year's period, or is that, I'm just trying to get a
Sure.
sense of
Yeah,
what you have
thanks.
pictured for that.
No, what I was saying is I would be in favor of hiring a consulting firm to do our HR on an interim basis until we were able to get a full-time, permanent HR hired.
So not to have an interim director, but to have outsourced help to perform HR functions, is that what you're saying?
Right, to allow us time to do a proper search for a permanent HR, chief of HR, whatever we
Right.
decide the level that we want to put that position
So
at.
would you be interested in tying that then to the organizational analysis work then that we are seeking to do?
Yeah, possibly. I am a little bit concerned about the way the job rec is now. I mean, I think our goal should be to get the strongest possible candidate, with the largest breadth and depth of experience.
And I completely support that position. My question about it is whether we have enough information right now about what sort of the departmental structure needs to be to best serve our district. And I'm a little hesitant to make assumptions now before we do have that organizational analysis
Yeah.
in hand. So I'm
Which
struggling
is
with that.
why
Yeah.
I think that going with an outside
Yeah.
consulting firm
Yeah.
would be our best option right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, Director Finch, just so I understand, is your thinking having an outside well, please rephrase for me. What that position would be? Would it be an interim HR director or a consultant to
Yeah, right, just-
someone working for another?
Just like we had our interim CFO come in as an outside consultant, on a temporary basis until we could hire our full-time CFO. That's what I would like to see with the HR position.
Okay, that helps a lot,
Okay.
Director Finch.
And I think in the audit, it flags some things going on with the Human Resources Department specifically and payroll. Several times in there, I am I'm more on the lean on the interim in support of Director Finch. And I don't know how long an interim HR person would be, but I get the organizational study will go on and it will provide recommendations. But to me right now, I want to get the best candidate that we can find for a full-time role. And granted, I understand there's pros and cons because a superintendent will come in at some point and they will potentially want their own staff, but at the same point in time, I need to look at the school district's needs now and given some of the things that were flagged within the audit, I would support the idea that Director Finch is pointing out and going out and hiring another, whether it's Grundemeyer or somewhere else, to help us find a full-time HR director.
I think we're actually talking about two different things, if I can just jump in. I think what you're talking about, Director Finch, is sort of like a fractional CHRO, or like we had, somebody who is employed elsewhere who is helping us out for a short-term period. And I think what you're talking about, Director Lingo, is doing a search for a permanent one. And I
Well,
think
doing the short term for now, but then when we get whatever needs to be done.
Yeah, just to add to that, I do agree with his approach for finding the
Sure,
permanent,
sure,
is
yeah.
using the search firm, because we've had some good success with that. Yep.
Superintendent Degner, did you tell us at the last meeting that kind of the cycle for HR hires is not like the cycle for most school administrative positions? So for example, if we did the organizational study, figured out the position we want, had an interim HR, figured out the position, we could post it in October or November, and for the permanent position, like we wouldn't be hampered that HR is all tied up and wouldn't be free until July 1st of 2027, right?
Right, if you had school-based, somebody under a school district type contract, they're gonna run that typical school calendar, with their contract, but people in industry or outside of, the K-12 education, they would have more flexibility to be job searching at any point in the year. And so I do think you could run a search following that at, a time that doesn't necessarily match up with what our typical contracts in school districts look like.
Because that's my only, I think our interim CFO did a stellar job, right? It came at an increased cost. So I'm just trying to balance, but if we could see it as a true interim of maybe 3 or 4 months instead of the whole year.
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry that I wasn't clear about that. That's exactly what I was picturing, is just
Okay.
a few months to allow us time to do a proper search, right?
Yeah. I think if that's our
I agree with you.
understanding. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we just pay such a premium if it
No,
was a
no,
12-month.
I completely agree. I envisioned, a few months, very, very temporary.
Okay.
Yep.
And given with the next steps of trying to find someone like we had with the CFO, we do a RFP. Is that how we found
Yeah,
Kim Michael Lee?
we didn't necessarily run an RFP process for that. We just recommended
Okay.
a contract to you guys. We had met with a few different consulting firms and then recommended a approach to you. So, a likely next step for the board would be the team could be tasked with conducting those and then make a recommendation to you. You'd probably, knowing that the next calendared meeting is July 28th, you'd probably have some kind of a special meeting to approve that, to onboard the group and get them started.
So in the meantime, while we're waiting for those recommendations, do we still need to name someone to be sort of in that seat?
if we get beyond, June 30th, yes, then I would think you're
June
gonna need
30th
to
is
name
week.
somebody.
It's Tuesday.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think we can get together a recommendation and come back for a special meeting in a week? Is that doable?
I mean, I would like to talk to the group and see what we could do in the next few days to know kind of the pool of what would be there for firms, and then see what we could recommend back to you. Excuse me, I was about to cough into the microphone. And so I could follow up with that for sure, Director Finch, and we could do our best to do that. I mean, we do have an HR manager, and so we still do have capacity in HR, but I understand from a leadership perspective why we still have staffing decisions that are being made and things like that throughout the summer. And so we'd certainly try to turn it around just as quick as possible. But I think if we were a couple days off into July, we could probably make it work until that point. But let's go back and we'll get working on it right away, and then see what kind of turnaround we could get back to you. And if we feel like it's going to be an extended one, just based on, contacts back and forth with those search firms, then we might want to reevaluate next steps from there.
Okay, thank you.
Is everybody okay with that?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And then we'll hold on anything for the long-term posting, just solve this problem
Yeah.
first of the interim, and then you guys will come back to that. Okay.
Next up is the discussion about the Financial Oversight Committee application process. Superintendent
Sorry,
Turner.
just making a note.
I know.
Yes, so you guys have approved the Financial Oversight Committee charter, and we now need to have an application process for for folks to be a part of that committee. And we've been engaged some with Greater Iowa City, who has volunteered to help and assist with that process. And so tonight, Katie Gerlach and Nancy Bird are both here. I believe Katie was willing to share some information with you about what that collaboration could look like, and then answer any questions you guys might have about some potential next steps. So Katie, and don't see where you're sitting, Katie and Nancy right there. So ask you guys to come on up.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Bird. I'm here tonight with my colleague Katie Gerlach on behalf of Greater Iowa City, Inc., the Johnson County Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Organization. We've received considerable feedback and concern from our business and nonprofit community on the challenges facing the school district. They have asked if our organization could help. I called the school board president, Ruthina Malone, a week ago Friday, and said I thought we could be of service. And she thanked me and said it would be great if we could come here tonight and share our thoughts. We are here to express our support for the Iowa City Community School District's efforts to restructure its Financial Oversight Committee and to offer our assistance as a neutral partner in the implementation process. As an organization that works across business, nonprofit, and public sectors, we recognize that strong, transparent financial systems are foundational to public trust and long-term community confidence. Katie will outline the specifics of our proposal for the community application and selection process. But before she comes forward, I also want to strongly encourage the board to secure professional communications guidance through an Iowa-based strategic communications firm to coincide with the launch of the Financial Oversight Committee. The success of this committee depends on many factors, including how it is established and how nominees are reviewed and put forward. But perhaps the most important to success is a clear communication strategy and execution of tactics so that the important work being done is known to the broader community and rebuilds trust in the Iowa City Community School District and its processes. We believe that a limited contract with Wickstead & Company, a strategic consulting firm that has worked with many Iowa City area organizations as well as school districts across the state, would maximize the impact of the Financial Oversight Committee by ensuring the committee's work is effectively shared with parents, teachers, staff, and the entire community. Wickstead can also give guidance to the board on how other important topics, including the search for a new superintendent, audit and budget updates, and so on, should be shared with stakeholders. This support is especially important with impending staff transitions. We need to make sure the staff that are available are able to focus on their day-to-day work and use this as an opportunity to supplement and support existing resources. This is a critical time for our school district, and you all know that. We're here as a community partner to offer our support and to encourage you to seek additional help where it is needed. And if you aren't interested, you can simply say so, and we will honor that.
Thank you for your service and for your consideration. I'll turn it over to Katie now to share the specifics of our proposal for the Financial Oversight Committee launch and selection process. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. My name is Katie Gerlach, and I'm the Executive Director of Better Together 2030 and Vice President of Programs for Greater Iowa City. As Nancy shared, our intent is simple. We are here as a community partner to support a strong, transparent, and neutral launch of the Financial Oversight Committee. Iowa City Schools are a key partner of Greater Iowa City in the Better Together 2030 Regional Strategic Plan. This moment reflects what that work is all about. Representative leadership, collaboration across sectors, and a shared commitment to a growth mindset. A strong public school system makes our entire community stronger and better together. I say that a lot, I'm sorry. What we are proposing is not a new structure or formal role for Greater Iowa City going forward. It's support for a process that is outlined already in your updated charter and additional vetting during a period of significant staff transition. From our perspective, the early stages of this committee matter just as much as the structure itself. How the opportunity is shared, how applications are received, and how candidates are reviewed will set the tone for credibility of the committee and the trust the community places in it. Over the past several weeks, we have heard from business and community leaders who are willing to step forward and serve. There is real interest, and there is also a consistent message. The selection process needs to be clear, fair, and visibly neutral. So our role is to help reinforce that. Specifically, we are offering support in 3 areas. First, outreach. We can help ensure the opportunity is broadly shared across sectors with clear expectations around the role, the time commitment, and the qualifications desired. The goal is to make sure that qualified, diverse candidates are aware of the opportunity and feel encouraged to apply. Second, a structured application process. This would include a simple application that captures relevant experience, along with a consistent evaluation rubric so that every applicant is reviewed using the same criteria. That consistency is important for both fairness and public confidence. Third, we would offer support for a balanced selection process. We would assist in convening a small cross-sector review group consistent with your charter requirements to evaluate applications and recommend a slate of candidates nominated for your consideration. That group would follow a clear scoring framework, disclose conflicts of interest, and focus on building a committee that reflects both technical expertise and community perspective. Because of the nature of your staff transitions, we believe this intermediary step, where a balanced and neutral party-led process can offer extra trust and support of the Business, Economic, and Community Development community. The board does not lose final selection of the nominees. In fact, this additional nominee vetting offers only an additional step and offer of support during a time of significant transition. In terms of qualifications, the emphasis is on financial and analytical expertise, but should also be on independence of thought, willingness to ask questions, and the ability to work collaboratively to communicate clearly in an oversight role. Our intent, depending on the number of applicants, would be to ensure that the board has a wide range of nominees to select from. Ultimately, the goal is to put forward a credible, well-rounded group of nominees who can support the district with strong oversight and help rebuild confidence moving forward. I also want to be clear about boundaries. We are not seeking an ongoing role in the work of this Financial Oversight Committee, your board operations, or the district itself. Once the initial selection process is complete, the committee operates under its charter and our involvement concludes. Our focus is on helping ensure the launch is strong because that first step is critical. Here's a proposed timeline. We believe after today's presentation, we can discuss and offer support of this nomination process. The application could be posted on June 29th. It could then be open through July 13th, with applications reviewed by the committee from July 14th through the 20th, and a nomination meeting the week of July 20th with nominees to be selected by the board by July. We will get those nominees to you by July 24th for your review at the July 28th meeting. And we would be present to help share feedback and oversight on what the process included. I also want to reinforce the point Nancy made at the beginning. The structure and selection process are critical, but so is how this work is communicated. A strong committee doing good work will not build trust if the community does not understand what it is doing or see progress being made. Clear, proactive communication is what will make this work visible and credible. Taken together, a strong front-end process and clear communications approach will give this effort its best chance to succeed. This is also where the broader Better Together mindset comes into play. When we are transparent, collaborative, and committed to learning and improving with the growth mindset, we build the kind of trust that strengthens not just a committee, but the entire system around it. Our role would be to help ensure the process starts on solid ground, and we encourage you to pair that with external support that will carry that work forward. We appreciate your leadership and the work you are doing in this challenging moment. A strong public school system is foundational to the strength and future of this community, and we are ready to support that in a constructive and neutral way. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions. I also have a written copy of a memo that I can deliver.
Thank you, Katie and Nancy. I would open it up to board members for comments or questions.
If you don't mind, President Malone. I really want to thank both of you for coming tonight and for the work you've done and the work you're doing with other people to get to this point. You're offering a partnership which is personally refreshing to me, and looking forward, although I don't know how the entire board will react to your proposal. But to me, this is an opportunity for all of us to continue the good work that has gone into making this the district of choice in this state, a district of choice in this state. Okay? So I really appreciate your being here, taking the time and all the work you're doing, and I'm looking forward to continuing this.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you've brought to us, and you've put some logic and process to something that's been whirling around in my head of all the different things to think about, and you've really put it down into a logical process that makes good sense for our community, for our board to consider. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Katie and Nancy, for coming tonight. I appreciate all the thought and work that you put into this. I regret that our next meeting is not until July 28th, because I wish that we could condense this timeline a little bit. So I don't know if that's at all possible. We've talked about having, a special meeting. I don't know if that's something that we could maybe work on to condense that timeline a little bit, because this is I feel like we're already delayed in doing this. We've been talking about this for months, and we approved it a month ago.
28 days.
Yeah. So if there is some way that we could kind of work out a more condensed timeline, I would be in favor of that. But thank you very much.
Yeah. Can I respond, or should I?
Sure. No, go ahead.
Okay. We're open to whatever timeline the board likes. We were reviewing the charter that was established, and it says that the application has to be open for 2 weeks, I believe. Okay. And so that's where I started from. That 2 weeks is a week getting to Monday, which we could post it before Monday if you want to do that. And then you just have to have it open, it looks like, for 2 weeks. And then you can come to the board, and our committee, we can pull the committee together quickly and then come to your next meeting, or you can set a special one.
Yeah, and it's up to my colleagues as well, but
Yeah.
I think that's something we're thinking about. Yeah.
I want to just chime in with my thanks too for your partnership and leadership and thought and care that you've put into this. I don't have anything substantial to add to what my colleagues have just said, other than I do have a question, and I appreciate what you've talked about with respect to I wrote myself some notes, the rubric for evaluating applications, which I think is critical, and so I'm assuming, since you're paying so close attention to the charter, that the items that you would choose for your rubric would be pulled
Directly from the charter.
And so I know that there has been broad support for this support that you're providing or offering. I also know that there are some concerns about some, wanting to ensure, as you say, that it's a fair and transparent process. And so I think being clear about those items that make up the rubric is going to be helpful too. So I just want to put
We'll make
that
sure
out
to
there.
present that with any
Thank you.
slate of nominees. I think the other interesting, it's a bit of a pickle that the board is in, because the charter that you established requires that 2-week application process. but the only people in that charter, it says the superintendent and CFO shall put forward the nominees. And so as we've heard tonight, that transition will make that almost next to impossible.
Yeah.
So we would offer our support to stand in that place, but also with district staff. And if you'll see in the memo, we're also suggesting that we would have board designees from the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Org, as well as the Iowa City Foundation Board, who you work closely with, and the Community Foundation of Johnson County has also offered their support from their Financial Oversight Committee, at least in reviewing nominees to put forward to you.
I would be, oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I just want to say thank you for the time that it took to put this together, but also taking the initiative to step up, raise your hand, and help the district. It's not surprising because Greater Iowa City has always been a great partner with the district. So immensely appreciative of that, and I would like to find a path to move forward. I really, what strikes me is your ability to form this neutral committee to do the vetting and initial selection, I think is a really important part of making this process seem fair. And so I really appreciate that.
We would just ask that we have a staff member to work with on this, and the charter asks that the CFO oversee the committee, and so we would ask whatever motion you make tonight that it give us the ability, or your CFO, the ability to work with us on this, and also to provide another designee from the board to sit on that committee, so that the board or a staff member designee based on the charter.
I don't know, because we'd have to have an agenda item to approve to be able to do that, so.
To approve the person.
Yeah, because we need to have something built in already that would have been publicly available starting 24 hours ago, right?
Yes. I believe so. Kim was shaking her head. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, if we need to throw together a 5-minute meeting to come up with something.
We can do an electronic meeting to approve it Thursday, right? Yeah, because that's the earliest to get in order to post it.
Yeah.
So if everybody's okay with that, that will be the plan, and we'll figure out what time based on schedules.
Could we also ask that you all have an opportunity to review a draft application and approve of that at that
Yes.
same meeting?
Absolutely.
And first, thank you. I started talking, and I didn't thank you for coming, both of you tonight. And again, I think I'll say a thank you for Emily Campbell for coming up with the idea and the draft version of the Financial Oversight Committee. So she's been with us for a while now, coming to our meetings. The one thing that I would also ask is a rubric to look at with the draft application. I don't know if that was part of the plan.
Happy to do that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Didn't want to assume.
Yeah.
That's great. Again, thank you for all of the hard work that both of you poured into this, your time with walking this process and various communication agencies with me. And we will get that meeting scheduled and everything approved and follow up.
Very good.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. That takes us to our last item on the agenda, which is board communication. Molly and I met with Wickstead, that was recommended by several people, including state elected officials, several board members, and they did get us a plan, even though this is dated the 18th. It did not come in until like after, I want to say 4:45 Friday. Hence why it took a while to get to board members, and it's not uploaded, but we can upload it after the meeting. As board members saw that I was able to get it out to you, they outline the goal, objectives, key stakeholders, as well as what their plan would address. I would open it up for questions or comments if this is something board members would like to explore and move forward with. It could also be approved on a special meeting as well, so.
So is that in our email somewhere? That-
Yes.
Okay, I must have missed that.
Yeah, thank you, President Malone, and I had a chance to review their proposal briefly, and seems very good to me. As we go forward with it, this is something that, this is an addition to what we do as a district that many people are supportive of and think that it would be a real addition to our overall approach to community relations. I would ask the superintendent as this moves forward that we assure our communication staff that we are looking to expand and make their efforts even more effective than they have been in the past. And we have no comments about, or no negative comments about what's been done. We're looking forward to making their work easier for them and better for the district.
Yeah, I mean, just for clarification, this would be working with the board for us to be able to have that avenue to communicate out. So something separate than what the district in-house communication team provides to, say, the superintendent or the CFO as they push messages out to our stakeholders.
Okay, good, thank you.
I am thrilled to see this. So thank you for having those conversations and giving us the opportunity to review this. One of the things that in looking, and again, it's been a pretty quick look at the proposal, but one of the things that I am curious about, and I don't know if you had a chance to talk with them about this, I see things that they are doing to gather information so that that can inform a plan that they developed, but I don't really see anything in their proposal that involves like a board discussion or work session or anything like that. And I feel like this is a pretty big shift. I think it's a really important shift. I think it will allow us to do a better job of communicating in a two-way fashion with our entire community. And I think that's crucial. But I also think that because it is a big shift, it's going to, we're not used to it, right? And so having a conversation where we can kind of talk through some of that will be really valuable. And so if it is included somehow in this proposal, but it's not just obvious, that's one thing. But if it's not included and we may need to go back to them and ask for something along those lines, I would be in favor of doing that. So I'll stop there and see what you talked about.
Yes, that was part of the conversation that we had. And the last line on the proposal talks about working alongside the school board to guide this process. So I think that's where they're capturing that work session with the board to have that conversation on what you raised, Director Horn-Frazier.
I'll just chime in and say I'm also happy to see this. And just so that the directors know, I went to a IASB training maybe 3 years ago with an ISAB brought in Wexted, and it was a 2.5-day training that we had, and it was very high level. The people from Wexted were very professional, very competent. So for what it's worth, I do think that they provide a high level of services and are good at what they do.
I also want to share that I had the opportunity to talk with Margaret with the UEN and talk about what other UEN districts do. Each one is different, what other boards do, and I think I'll have the opportunity to get some information from her as well about what's done elsewhere. And you know, every district has a different personality and needs, and so what works in one district isn't necessarily going to be what works here, but we can at least get ideas from that. And I think, and I've been making a list of all of the community suggestions for communication over the last couple of months, to everything from, oh, let's put a conflict of interest form with our bios, to let's think of better ways to name our files, to all kinds of things that are just in the interest of better communication. And so I'm excited for this. I just want to say thank you again.
Any additional questions or comments? So I know it was a quick turnaround. We could potentially put that on a special meeting for us to have additional conversation and take a vote, because it sounds like folks are interested in moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, thank you. That takes us to the presentations for tonight, and the first one is the fiscal 24 audit report.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight to present your June 30th, 2024 Financial and Compliance Report. I'm Sarah Bonsack, and I have with me today my partner, Mia Bonsack, or Mia Fromelt. And our presentation itself is pretty succinct. I have kind of a roadmap of the Financial and Compliance Report, just to point out where everything is within that report. And then I have the communications to the board. And then we're here to answer any questions you may have on the June 30th, 2024 financial or the timeline for the future audits. So with that, the first page, as I said, is kind of the roadmap to the Financial and Compliance Report. It starts, and I'm talking about the bound document. It starts with the table of contents, and that's followed on page 4 by the management discussion and analysis. And the management discussion and analysis provides a high-level overview of a comparison of fiscal year 24 compared to fiscal year 23. That is followed by the government-wide financial statements, which start on page 16. The government-wide financial statements are intended to be, if you will, a consolidated version of the school district, and it's presented on the full accrual basis of accounting. That's followed by your fund financial statements, and that's more of what you're accustomed to looking at when you're looking at the financial information. Fund financial statements, the governmental funds are presented on the modified accrual basis of accounting, which is generally accepted accounting principles. And the enterprise funds, the proprietary funds, are presented on also a full accrual basis. Those financial statements are followed by your notes. Your notes give you a broader understanding. It has a view of your capital assets that the district has, as well as the debt, pension, more information than you ever wanted to know about your pension plan, and other information in more detail. And that's followed by your supplementary information, which is your budget to actual. Those are your financial section, and that's followed by your compliance section, which starts on page 82, and we'll go into more in-depth when we go to the required communications. Any questions on that? If not, the next page is the audits completed and the required communications. Actually, when we come out to do an audit of the district, we really do 3 different types of audits. One is an audit of your financial statements. The second is an audit of Government Auditing Standards audit. And that audit, the purpose of it's twofold. One is to look at your internal control system and to test it to make sure that it's functioning as it was designed, and also to look at your compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, and grants. The third type of audit that we do is your federal single audit. And that audit is required when you have over $1 million of expenditures in your federal awards. So the financial statement audit was an unmodified opinion, which is the highest form of opinion that you can receive. There is an emphasis of a matter that refers you to note 15 within the financial statements. There was a restatement due to correction of a previous error in the financial statement. And that was all in that governmental activities, which is that full accrual basis of accounting. And the largest of those were a restatement of the recognition of income surtax revenue within those statements. The Government Auditing Standards audit does have some material weaknesses reported. When we think about different types of weaknesses you can have, control deficiencies are, if you're thinking of a barometer, are your lowest level. And then you have significant deficiencies, and the highest level and the most concerning are those that are considered material weaknesses. Within your report, your internal control findings are reported on page 92 through 96. The compliance findings through that audit are reported on page 96 through 98. The compliance section, as I mentioned earlier, starts on page 82 with your expenditures of federal awards. And that's followed by the notes to the expenditures of federal awards and your summary of prior audit findings, which give you the evaluation of what was corrected from the previous year's report. The federal single audit, this year you expended $13.7 million in federal awards in 2024. The major federal programs that we tested were your child nutrition cluster, which was about $5.9 million. Your special education cluster, which was about $1.2 million. And your education stabilization fund, which was about $1.6 million. So out of that $13.7 million of federal funds, we tested about $8.7 million of those. There were material weaknesses reported. They're on pages 98 through 101. There were also significant deficiencies reported, which are on page 101 through 102. And in addition, we had compliance findings that were also reported on page 102 through 106. And the very last page of the audit, the last two pages, provide you a summary and refer to the corrective action plan of those findings. So with that, we're happy to address any questions you may have on the June 30th, 2024 audit.
Thank you so much. I would open it up for directors.
I had a question about interfund transfers. And maybe you could just talk about that. I know well, I'll just let you talk about it. I know just a little bit about it, and I'm trying to understand more, but I know there are some that have to go into certain accounts, have to be spent out of other, have to go into certain funds, spent out of other funds. But I'm unclear about how much total interfund transfer there was and how much should have been board approved and wasn't.
Okay. The interfund transfers, I think it gives you a clear picture, are on page 44 in note 3. And really, when you're looking at this footnote, it's the interfund balances and interfund transfers. Excuse me. So you have due from other funds and due to other funds. And you can see you can see the total of those as well, the 38.1 million that is receivable. A lot of times this happens from a cash management standpoint. And I think, you know, what you're seeing here is indicative of the bank reconciliations were not being performed on a timely manner at this point in time. And so what was happening is we were borrowing from one fund to pay the expenditures of the other fund. And normally that happens at times, and then they are repaid as soon as the bank reconciliations are done. And so because the bank reconciliations were not being completed on a timely manner, the eyes were not on this to see, oh, I need to reimburse that fund back for those expenditures that were made. Because each of these funds have the cash position to refund or to repay these interfund receivables and payables at that time. So those are your due to, due from. So at the end of 2024, they had not been repaid. The transfers in or out are permanent transfers from one fund to another, and they have to be for the purpose. So you have your capital projects funds that transfer to your debt service fund, and that's to repay the debt that you've approved. And then you also have the ability within your general fund for protective safety equipment to transfer to your student activity funds, and those are what's reflected in those actual interfund transfers. So the money in the transfers in and transfers out, that's a permanent movement of funds, whereas in your due to, due froms, that is a borrowing from one fund to another.
So when I'm looking at 2024-008 in the schedules of findings and costs, page 97, and it says that the district has interfund receivables and payables totaling $38,166,276. And then you have declaratory order 4672. Does that mean that this is $38 million in interfund loans, or is it interfund, like, are they loans or not?
Yeah, if you really look at them, like if you're looking at the general fund, so on page 44, we reflected them how they were in the trial balance of the district. If you look at the general fund and net them, you come to a different answer as far as what was actually outstanding at the end of the year. But because the eyes were not on this, we may have repaid an interfund loan, but we posted it to the receivable instead of posting it to the liability account. Does that help with that?
I guess I'm just trying to figure out how much money were interfund loans versus interfund due to, or whatever.
Due to, due froms is the same thing as interfund loans.
Okay.
There's really not an interfund loan. There's a due to, due from. There is such a thing as an interfund advance. So what that means is we don't have the ability to repay this by the October 1st deadline.
Okay. So do we have to go back and retroactively approve this, or how does that work? Or is that?
The finding is reported within
Okay.
your financial statements. So the corrective action would be to repay them, to get them repaid. If they've been outstanding longer than a year, there should be interest that's assessed against them, and that should also be repaid to the fund that lent the money.
So depending on the date, we're at least 2 years worth of repayment. Okay.
And so, just so that I'm tracking on page 44, so what this is saying is that the general fund is owed from other funds approximately $29 million. But at the same time, the general fund owes other funds $20 million.
Is owed from other funds $20 million, yes.
So they borrowed some funds money. I know you don't like me to use the word.
That's okay.
Some funds money, some money from various funds were transferred to the general fund, but at the same time, the general fund transferred money to other funds.
Correct.
And that's the 29 and the $20 million.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So is this the normal type of thing that you would see when auditing a district, that you're gonna see these types of fund transfers?
Normally, you only see due to, due froms at the end of the year. So many of our, within your district, you don't necessarily have pooled cash. So you have separate bank accounts. So in your situation, in order to repay where some money's been borrowed, you have to physically transfer it from one bank account to another bank account. So oftentimes what we see is at the end of the year, they look at the cash balance and they repay everything that can be repaid at that point in time. And then as money comes into that particular fund, they repay before October 1st.
I'm just trying to understand if this is something that our district has been doing for a number of years, or if this year is kind of an outlier.
The magnitude of this is probably an outlier.
Okay.
I can't actually answer that because I don't.
Obviously, yeah.
It does, due to, due froms do happen within districts.
Okay, but not to this magnitude,
Correct.
you don't think? Okay. And then also, just for clarity, are these the type of interfund loans that require board approval or not?
Technically, yes. Technically, at the end of the year, we'd look at our cash positions, and if a fund has to borrow from another fund, you would ask for approval.
Okay, okay.
Do we know how many times this happened in 2024? Or do you have to go back? If you need to go back and
Yeah,
look into
it would, yeah, it would show within your general ledger detail. And again, some of yours, like if you look at your general fund, it's possible that when we repaid it to the asset account instead of or to the liability account instead of the asset account. So some of it should have been matched.
And I know this question, it got answered in email, but I just want to put it out there for public. Were there any securities or anything like that cashed out throughout this process?
Not that we're aware
Okay.
of, no.
I had a question about the restatement. So, FY '23 went through an audit. So, is it possible that that was missed, or how is that possible that that was missed?
When they had, I don't know if you want to.
Sure. So most of the restatement has to, first I want to clarify, only impacts are government-wide, so it does not impact your individual funds like your general fund. But it was primarily over income surtax, which is an actual tax from income tax. But the way that it's distributed appears to be like a property tax, just simply of the distribution mechanism. And so there's, the prior audit reported it as part of property tax instead of a separate income surtax. So we had to clarify that and change that to 2023's beginning equity.
Okay, okay. I'm not sure if I have.
So,
Yeah, I think I'm done with questions for you, yeah.
given the corrective action plan that you list on page 107 regarding the material weaknesses and the non-compliance, I noticed that the anticipated completion date lists as fiscal year 2027. Is that June 30th? Like that?
It's during the year, fiscal year
So
2027.
just during the year where we can talk with our CFO about board expectations on like how we would want that reported out on when that's fixed.
Right, because unbelievably, 2027 starts here in another week, yeah.
Okay. So I have a question for CFO. given these material, the corrective action plans, have you and your team been able to give some consideration to the timeline on when these will start to be corrected?
I think that's a fair question. Some of the, where would I find that, Kim? Mine?
What are you trying to do? I'm sorry.
Mine, that two-pair, the six-page thing, sorry. That one, yeah, this one? Yep. Thank you, sorry. If you don't mind, I'll go into this piece here where we kind of talk, I took what they placed on the last two pieces of the audit and I tried to put some context into it. I knew that there were things already that we're doing internally to take care of this, but just kind of also talk a little bit about where we're at on things as far as segregation of duties, payroll cycles and things. I think I want to highlight one thing right now, which really calls out our team right now. We're very short-staffed right now. We have some things that are going on in our payroll file. This is not part of the audit, but our payroll file actually got uploaded by one team member, and it was 2 days early, so I just wanted to give a shout out for that. So we have a lot of things going on internally. We're using Asana, which actually puts payroll tasks out there, and they have clearly defined dates, and they are literally checked off. I have access now. I've asked for access. They also have a dashboard up in the back room back there where they have everything. It was huge this last week because we had lots of payrolls going on, so listed everything out. So really proud of the work that they're doing, but we still have continued work to do. We talked about cash disbursements. We have a lot of discussions. We have a lot of professional development opportunities. We've met with activity directors last week, so we did discuss activity funds. We have a lot of things, moving pieces right now. Receipting processes, we are working through that not only with the activity fund, but we're going to be addressing internally with general fund. Again, seems very simple, but just discussing what's an account code, what's a revenue, what's an expenditure, how do I know the differences? We're going to have those conversations, and that's just professional development for everyone, whether you've been here 5 minutes a month or you've been here for 10 years. I just think it's worth having those discussions with everyone. Cash accounts, certificates of deposit. We have access to all of our online bank accounts. Business office currently working on the FY25 audit internally, some things, and then they will be here in August again to come back, do all those fun things, and then we'll be back here in the fall with the FY25 audit. And then just shortly after that, then we'll be working on the FY26. And mind you, have all this concluded in a timely manner that the FY26 will be filed by the 3/31 deadline. So check, check, check. Improper identification and adjustments of funds. We've got a lot of things as far as adjustments. You've seen those not only in here, all through the pages. And again, it's professional development with everybody on board. We now have 2 CPAs on staff. One of them is an SBO, I'm an SBO, and we have another SBO down in the HR department. So I think we've really beefed up kind of the people within the office, and now it's just that continual professional development piece of things. We've actually even looked at journal entries. There's multiple layers to the journal entries. Put on a sheet, one person puts it out there, the other one person approves it, somebody else puts it into the system. So there's a multiple layers of segregation going on. And a lot of this work, when Kim Michael Lee was here, started all these great things, right? So we're just building on that. We're continuing to enhance that. Single audits not filed timely. We're obviously working on that right now. 24 will be filed tonight, tomorrow. That will be taken care of. 25 coming up in 26. Deficit balance in student activity fund, again, we're working through all those. It's not going to happen overnight. I continue to say that, and I know it's very redundant, but it's not going to happen overnight. We've had really great conversations with the ADs, and the next step is we're going to be meeting with the ADs, the secretaries, and the finance secretaries, having one-on-one conversations about how we'd like to see things progress, collaborate, what we want, and then put a plan in action to get those things done. Interfund payables and receivables, we just talked about those. Those are pretty high on my list as far as anything that the board needs to be approved is coming to you. It's not going to be one of these here. Now just know, obviously this is 24. We have a 25 audit coming and we're already in 26. Can I guarantee you that 25 is going to look any different than what we're seeing right now? I can't guarantee that, so that's full clarity. Lacked adequate processes and federal programs. Same thing again. We had a lot of staff turnover in a lot of key positions. Special education was one of those where we lacked some documentation.
clearly stated in the audit again. Policies, procedures, when we bring people on, what are the expectations for your job? What pieces of your job are going to fall into an audit, and how do we make sure we have clear segregation of duties? So again, communication, talking with everyone involved, and there's a lot of meetings involved. Another one, federal capital assets, same thing. It's just that discussion of better policies, better procedures. We've actually beefed up, we're going to be using our finance software for capital assets and bringing those in effective July 1st, pending nothing happening internally, but we're going to be taking care of all that, which means it's going to be in the software system, better reporting, and everyone will have access to it. Process for special ed high claims, same thing I just discussed, where we had a high cost claim, and unfortunately, turnover within staff, and we were not able to provide appropriate documentation for those things. So process and procedures for report preparation and review, that was another thing where we had one person that had access to a multitude of things. Now it's very segregated as far as who has access to cash accounts, who can post things, who can do journal entries, all of those things. So there is a multiple layer of security and segregation of duties as well. Non-compliance material, allowable expenditures charged to the ESF programs, working with the auditors as far as found some things in there that were not allowed. Again, policies, procedures, discussion, everybody knows if you have a grant, this is what you can and can't spend it on. These are the things you did say you'd spend it on. These are parameters, and again, clear, concise communication with all members. 2024-14, regards to up above, special education, the lack of documentation. Next ones I consider not easy, but certified budget exceeded. Not gonna happen. Mark that down on me. Not gonna happen here. You are required before you're going to exceed any of the 4 functional categories in a budget to amend it. Public hearing and amend it. Can't be any of the 4 areas or in total, so that will be taken care of, so that will not be a problem.
What are the 4 areas?
Instruction, support services, non-instruction, and other. Instruction would be general education instruction, could be special education, vocational, co-curricular. Support services could be guidance counselors, could be nurses, could be technology, it could be your finance staff, it could be transportation. Non-instructional would be your nutrition program. And then other expenditures, a large part would be your capital projects.
Can I stop you and ask you a question on that? Because in our 2024, well, in the audits on page 65, it shows that we overspent in other expenditures by $19.5 million. The original, well, at least the budgeted was 87 million, final was 102 million rounded up for a total about 19.5. So what does that mean for us? Does that mean we're out of compliance with what, like, because we submit a budget, right, to the state, and if we go over that budget?
Yes, that's the one, their public hearing is, you have one in March and then another in April, and then that is certified to Department of Management at that time. That's correct.
So we will probably be hearing about this overspending, or how does that work?
Complete honesty, I'm not sure how that rolls. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fair. If you've never run into it, that's a good thing. Yourself.
We're gonna continue to work on that. Certified enrollment variances, again, just a lot of professional development as far as all the different multi-layers. This is a large district. How many people do you have involved in the process? Does everyone in the process understand, as far as counting a student, what that impact is, whether it's a 1.0 student, a homeschooled, whatever it might be? Does everyone understand that impact? And again, continual conversations, transparency, and talking with everybody as stakeholders. Supplementary weighting is the same thing. Everyone involved as far as understanding when those come across the impact. So those do come through. So when the auditors come and they verify that in fact there is a change to certified enrollment, once they take care of it, that goes to the Department of Management, which then triggers the Department of Management, knowing when we file our aid and levy that we have an adjustment to our audit, to our aid and levy to the certified enrollment, whether it be an up or a down. Same thing with supplementary weighting. So then those give authorization for the Department of Management to pull those into our next available aid and levy. Depository resolution, another simple one. I'll bring that to you at your annual meeting, and simply all it is, it will be on Iowa City letterhead. States every single one of the depository deposits that you have, whether it be whatever bank that we have funds with, They will be listed on there with a max. So what I'll do is go through the GL and see the max that's been at any of those institutions within the past few years, give a buffer for that piece, and that's just on an annual basis. You can add banks at any time, and you can also come back and change the depository resolutions if needed. So that's very simple to do. And then the last one is the 509A certificate as far as self-funded insurance. We've talked about that. 24 has been filed and 25 has been filed as well. So I think we've made a lot of gains on things, but we have a long way to go, complete honesty. I think we've got a wonderful partnership here with some great auditors who have, I think, came in and done a tremendous amount of work in a very short amount of time. We still have a lot to go, though.
So I want to thank both of you for your work on this audit and the continuing work on the fiscal year 25 and 26 audit. I think that you all know that these audits have been a priority of the board, and we've heard that you've really gone above and beyond to accelerate the speed of your work and to get us this information. So I'm grateful for that extra care and attention you've given to the district, and I really just want to express gratitude for you for that. Pat, my question is for you. I'm wondering, could you, with your monthly financial reporting that we're going to be getting, I think the positive part of the audit is it lays out very clearly where our material weaknesses are, and they're numbered, so it's very easy to track. And one thing that I found really helpful when Kim was here was that tracking chart that she would give us with her monthly reports, and it would say, you know, in progress or completed, or and kind of give a timeline of when we expected to have things done. It helped me kind of make sure that we were staying on track. And I wonder if you could prepare a similar document for us to be included in your monthly financial updates. I kind of track the 14 material weaknesses as well as the 5 statutory reporting issues, and then on that chart track, you know, resolved or in progress, completion date, October 2026. Again, just so that we can continue to monitor, stay engaged, and also make sure that, at least for me, it's a priority to get all of these material weaknesses cleaned up and make sure that they don't happen again.
I think that's wise. I think it's not only for board's purpose, but I also think it provides transparency to all of your constituents as far as everybody's seen the audit now, and we can look at things, and I can do that very same thing, just obviously in my words as far as Kim Michael Lee's, of here is your material weakness 2024-001.
Yeah.
Here's the date. Yep, these are things that we're working on, and transparency again, not only here, but right here. So everybody is on board. And what was spoke about earlier, building trust, right? That's what we're going to be doing, is we're putting out there and we're addressing things. So I think that's, as long as the board, I am absolutely open to that.
Thank
That
you.
would be great. I was gonna ask for that. So,
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And, you know, kind of, you know, we've been asked to maybe answer some of our community commenters' questions when it's on the agenda, right? So, you know, talking about one of our community commenters who brought a really nice, colorful chart. So I know, Pat, that you've talked about having a dashboard or a control tower, and you know, that easy readability where it's red, yellow, green for some of our, you know, key performance indicators, you know, our KPIs, like our days net cash, our UAB, our solvency. If we could sort of devise something like that, so that you can just look at it and know, and it can be on the website, it can be on our board docs, monthly for us to look at. I think that would be a wonderful addition to what Director Williams was talking about. I just wanted to backpedal a little bit, because thank you so much for going through the corrective action plan with us. And I recognize you weren't here in September when we had the FY23 audit, but we also had a corrective action plan then. And I'm just curious, like, how much of that has been completed at this time point? And you may not know the answer to that.
I can answer that.
Okay.
So if you turn to, let's see, it's page 85. So 85 is our summary of schedule of prior audit findings. So it would have listed all of the findings that the prior auditor had. And then we're required to audit them to see whether a corrective action has been completed or not. And from there, we either report them. You'll see we kind of split ours out a little more, so, and tried to provide recommendations so that the district had something to work with as far as corrective action. And I guess one more comment I'd like to make is we've talked about the timeline that we'll be back out here in August, and then we'll be back out in January. All of the findings you see today as far as the material weaknesses under government auditing standards will be repeated in both those audits. And I just wanted to make that very clear because there's obviously, when you're just hearing about them within the last week, you can't correct them. So our first opportunity to look at your corrective action for these findings will be when we do fiscal year 27 audit. Okay, I wanted to lay that out there.
Really highlights the importance of getting these in on time, right? Yeah. And just one more question, and this was answered by email, but because this was a question from a constituent, I just wanted to address this at the board table. The letter that was signed by our CFO and our assistant controller, so apparently there was some issues getting some signatures because people were on leave, but those signatures are on behalf of the people who normally sign that letter. Is that correct? So they would be on behalf of the superintendent?
Normally, we would have had the superintendent and then the person most highly involved in the audit, which would have been Alan.
Okay.
Throughout the audit process, once Pat was here and Reagan were highly involved in the meetings at the end of the audit, and also did an extremely thorough review of the financial report, so I was comfortable with their signatures and representation for the district.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we answered that question for the constituents who've been asking about that, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I just have a quick comment to extend one of the comments that Director Finch made and connect it to something that CFO Moore talked about, and that is we had a conversation very recently about putting together ideas, collaborating on ideas for a dashboard, and there's a Google Doc we could all throw ideas into. So on a real practical level, I think that putting together ideas for what would be valuable to be able to track over time, I think your examples were great, and maybe that's, I don't imagine there's maybe a huge number of items, but a few key indicators that we could just track to help give ourselves and our community a sense of our progress.
You can use the SMART. Do you know this? The SMART acronym?
Oh, yeah.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we also have had some offers of help to put things on the website. So I think all of this isn't completely doable, and I think we can get something working pretty quickly.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
President Malone, I have a question. I would like to go back to what has to do with the interfund balances and interfund transfers. Can you just help me to understand if having interfund transfers is something that I should avoid approving?
No, not necessarily. The interfund transfers, okay, let me take a step back. The interfund transfers, you can only make a transfer to a fund, authorized fund, if you will, and so yours are. I have no concerns about your physical transfers, which are a permanent transfer of funds. Your due to, due froms, I think it's okay to approve a borrowing from another fund for a cash flow purposes. It's just that it should be approved, and it should be repaid on a timely basis. And it's really more a symptom of monitoring than it is financial weakness. Like I said, every one of those funds had the ability to repay that at the end of fiscal year '24. The entries and the transactions just didn't happen.
Okay, thank you very much.
So,
Can I comment to Director Easton?
Certainly.
I think one additional thing that might help a little bit is I'd mentioned we have online access to all of our banks on a daily basis in the morning. That's the first thing we're all checking. As far as not only what board bills are out there, if we have ACHs coming in, so we're doing a much better job as far as capturing those things. Are we perfect? No, but we're going to continue and enhance that. Even when you're great, you can be better, right? So we're going to continue, but I just wanted to let you know that we do have access to all of those, and we are keeping a very watchful eye on everything.
Okay, thank you very much.
A few more questions. Oh, sorry. So a lot of the HR and payroll discussions that are in the audit, those are already been worked on under, okay. I saw in here that with our early retirement programs, we resulted in $1.2 million in liability above board policy. Do we know how or why this happened? Anybody? Or?
It's due to the, let me look to make sure I don't
Yeah, that's fine.
misspeak. Let's see.
Because it required board approval, and that's why in part why I'm asking.
And the board approved the early retirement. Can't find which finding that is. But it was there was a additional benefit added to incent someone to submit their resignation letter earlier, and it was through a sick leave
Okay,
payout.
got it. Then this goes back to the Student Activities Fund, 2024-007. I know we're at like $987,000 deficit. This is a question that's been asked to me from people in the community. How does this get paid back, or what is this something that we can pay back incrementally? Is it due October 1st, or what is?
That is a great question. We have decided, we've talked about with the ADs that obviously it is not legal for a general fund outside of a safety transfer to provide funding to the activity fund. Complete honesty right there. Conversation has centered around the amount of money that you just talked about is a large sum of money. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
A lot of conversations as far as appropriate expenditures, revenue and expenditures. Just a lot of those very open conversations as far as how we're going to get there. And we have also reiterated with them, this is not going to happen overnight. We're going to have to take small steps. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear.
No,
but it's going to take
yeah.
some small steps to get to that point, and it's going to take some years. This didn't happen overnight. This has been going on for a while.
Then, looking at the major issues in this audit, and after attending the SBRC and the state board meetings, have they been contacted and talked to about this audit for discussion? Yes. Yeah.
That's a great question. I don't really have a summary. I did have the opportunity, I felt over this weekend that I just felt it best to contact Cassandra Klein. Reached out to her on Monday morning, and we kind of missed each other yesterday. So I had an opportunity to discuss to her noon, about 15 minutes. She was in the car. Really great conversations. I told her that I would be sharing the audit. They can obviously see it once it's filed, but I did want to share that up front. Had some conversations with her as far as fiscal reporting, what she would be seeing from us, and would that suffice not only for the board, but as well as the SBRC. So a really great conversation about that. They're very well aware, obviously, of the situation, and once they read this, I think it will put more context to it.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, and then the last one, this is to the auditors. Where was it at then? The audit references significant turnover in the business office six times in it. Are you talking about significant turnover during fiscal year '24, or just significant turnover over the past 2 or 3 years?
This was 23-24 turnover that we're referring to.
Okay. But because when I went through and I looked at it, and the major turnover that I saw was the CFO, and a lot of the people remained the same, so.
In the grants, there's been turnover over those years, that the documentation of the grant information we needed was no longer
Okay.
available.
So
Thank you.
I probably misspoke as far as that then.
In terms of the grants.
Right,
but-
so.
But the business office is yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just want to double check, any other questions or comments? We appreciate your time tonight and your time for the audit. And we'll see you back here in, I think you said October, for the fiscal year 24 audit.
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
25, yeah, 25, I'm sorry. I'm talking about 24 so much, I said it's 25. Next up, we will get to the screen time survey results, and Superintendent Degner is already at the podium.
Yeah, good evening again. I'm gonna, I'll make this one relatively brief. You kind of see the takeaway already at the end of the presentation that I'm sure you've had time to review, but we did want to report back to you on the screen time survey that went out following the cell phone survey. So really the objectives for tonight were to review that with you, discuss next steps to policy, and then make sure we addressed any questions you might have. You obviously remember that during the legislative session, the MAHA bill assigned limitations to screen time for K-5 students. And so that, of course, is guiding some of this work or next steps moving forward as well. So I'm going to draw your attention to that. You have the data on how many respondents we have or that we had to the survey, including families and staff. The other categories asterisk there for your reference. Respondent information, as far as work location, you can see the breakdown of the different attendance centers there in the district and the respondents according to that attendance center. Obviously, some higher participation numbers at our secondary schools with more staff. Staff survey information. These are really organized into what staff value, their concerns, and then some common recommendations that we found as kind of threads or consistent themes throughout that. And really that overall theme is that they strongly support educational technology, but favor a more balanced approach with some clearer expectations, stronger safeguards, and intentional instructional use. And really for our staff, that's us being able to provide them professional development or training in that regard, them having an opportunity to talk to each other about best practices, and then also assisting them with how we can do some things along the lines of stronger safeguards and monitoring. Family survey, organized the same way here for feedback for you with what they appreciate, their concerns, and then common recommendations. And again, families appreciate the access to ed tech while advocating for less screen time, some better transparency and stronger restrictions on non-academic use, and a balanced approach to that prioritizes really direct instruction and some more traditional learning experiences throughout their students' school-based experience here with us. Staff responses, here you get into some more of the details with the staff responses. You see some notes there, or you see on the overall benefit, most find it beneficial, somewhat beneficial, very beneficial. I think you get into then some further elements of the details about what part of it they find is beneficial as we go through the presentation and those results here. Which of the following screen time practices would you support? And here you see some strong emphasis for reconsideration of how we look at the one-to-one device model, or some notes about trying to prohibit some recreational screen use or keeping the devices at school. And so when we look at those, I think there's some support for us to look at a different model, and that could be dependent upon level, of course. I think we had some good anecdotal feedback that wouldn't necessarily be reflective in the results here about that elementary change that we had made this year. And so it makes me just curious about, with something additional for middle school would be a potential good next step there when you look at how some of that data is broken down. But I think some room for improvement or some room for additional conversation and consideration there about what that looks like for the district. Secondary staff results on how much average time do your students spend in class on the Chromebook in a normal week. And so really there for the majority, you see that it's less than an hour, between 1 to 2 hours. Obviously those higher numbers in there, I'm sure, are concerning to all of us about how much time is on a device, dependent upon, of course, I'm sure if it's an instructional activity or otherwise, but still that seems like an extreme amount of time, even if it's not the majority of staff responding that way. Secondary staff results continued the activities that they are doing, and so here you see a lot of assignments on Canvas that teachers use as their learning management system where assignments are posted. Research obviously was another high category here, and then project creation. You do see some other things that while they might not be the highest, again, the level of those is not something we necessarily are happy about or would like to see as much with the playing games and watching videos. And so again, room for some movement, I think, on there as we follow some of those recommendations and themes. Elementary staff survey results about how much time. Here you see a smaller amount of time, which is positive, which is what we would hope to see for elementary. So the less than 30 minutes or between 30 minutes to an hour, 1 to 2 hours, that's for elementary students, probably that same red flag moment for us with the secondary kids when we're getting up into those categories. And then what activities are your students doing on the Chromebook? Here you see a lot more of those adaptive platforms as a high result area in the survey. We don't have as our secondary students on those adaptive platforms like we do our elementary students. And so you see some definite change there in the answer type as far as where they're spending that time. And then the open-ended things that they see as some of the biggest challenges to a policy that would prohibit the use of Chromebooks. Of course, those adaptive tools do allow us to differentiate. Right? So there's a positive, there's a reason they're selected, there's a reason they're implemented. Teachers, as we've talked to them again informally and anecdotally, right, if we take away some, there needs to be time to plan for what would be in its place and what would be provided for learning tools for our students and our teachers. Challenges with assessment, progress monitoring, testing. This is one, it's not just the once a year testing that we think about for the summative assessments, it's also the progress monitoring requirements in our classrooms that have to be met, and so the technology tools allow our staff to be able to do that in a more seamless fashion. You've heard us talk about equity before and making sure that there's access that's opened up across, and then if there were less access to those Chromebooks, what would the impact be on digital literacy, research, creativity? Some of those items were also a theme. Greatest benefits they see, again, the differentiated personalized learning. It's kind of the flip of what we just talked about, right? What would be the drawback if you take them away? Well, these are some of the benefits, right, that they're finding. And so accessibility, accommodations, equity, research, would look a lot different. I mean, typically right now we think about if we're going to go do research on something, that's all happening electronically, not through some of the text that we would have had in our school experience. Efficiency, access, organization. There's a lot of big efficiency tools for staff to be able to provide feedback to students through those tools. And then assessment, intervention, and again, independent learning they see as positives. The challenge then maybe with the concern you have with one-to-one Chromebooks, right? So this question's a little bit different from the aspect about just focused on Chromebooks. And of course, here the first one we list is the distraction, the off-task behavior in gaming, the excessive screen time and technology dependence, right? And we've talked about that before, even in regards to phones when we've had that look at it. Academic integrity, critical thinking, and skill development. This has been an issue all along with some of the academic fidelity around cheating or plagiarizing, things like that. And of course, as those tools get stronger for good purposes, they also get stronger, for some not so good purposes. Device management, responsibility, and maintenance. A lot of concerns, we hear from staff different times about just are they plugged in? Are they charged up and ready to go? Are they broken? Is everybody really able to use them when we're ready to instruct a class? And then monitoring, supervision, and appropriate use. We've made some strides here, but I think there's, again, more room to improve in this regard about what are all the tools that we could get to our staff about monitoring. This is also something that's going to come back in the parent results that you see. You know, are parents aware, and could they effectively utilize or understand, you know, what those tools are to monitor their students' behaviors on the Chromebooks? That's kind of a twofold issue for us with staff and with staff and families. So what changes would you support to help us use technology more effectively? There they talked about keeping the Chromebooks at school and reducing one-to-one access. So again, they like the access to the technology, but maybe not the all the time access and the real-time access. Strengthen monitoring restrictions, accountability, we've touched on that. How do we look at digital literacy, typing, and technology instruction? You know, I think that's always been a challenge for where does that live and what is the sweet spot in trying to find how that happens, and it's got to be cyclical, right? It can't just happen in one grade level and think the kids are digitally literate, right? We have to cycle that through the curriculum throughout their school experience. Establish clear expectations and balance technology use. So we've seen good success if you take our cell phone work about when we have clear and consistent expectations across the board. You know, everybody's risen to that level, and we see good results from that. And so I think, again, here with our Chromebooks or access to one-to-one devices, you know, not specific to Chromebook, whatever the device is, you know, we would see that or would expect that same expectation to be met. Maintain useful technology tools while improving training and support. So again, you know, that training and support piece for our staff would be helpful for them. So we might have a classroom monitoring software for them, but do they know how to use it? Have they have time to be trained on how to use it? And then we get to the families. It's really laid out a lot of the same way throughout the presentation here. Student Attendance Center. Again, you see the results about where we had a lot of participants. Penn was really excited about participating. They're the outlier here, so we got a lot of respondents out of Penn. Yeah, there you go. All family survey results, as far as I'm aware of how much my student uses their Chromebook during the school day. So interesting one here to see, you know, just the level of awareness for parents about how much their kid is on the device at school versus how much they might not feel like they're very aware of that at all. And so I think that disagree part, again, is another area for improvement for us, right? No matter what it is, we'd want our parents to be aware of what that looks like. All family survey results continued. How familiar with the security features the district has in place? And, you know, this one, as far as my reaction to it, I mean, I was glad to see that, you know, close to 50% were familiar with them, but that's still a large chunk, 30%, that's not familiar with them at all. And so I think some of our efforts have had an impact there to communicate. We had done a lot of work with our principals about communicating out some of those tools consistently in a newsletter. But I think we just have to continue to diversify communication methods. We know that's always what is most beneficial. How well does your child's school communicate its technology and screen time policies? And this kind of flows into what I was saying, right? We can do a lot better with communicating there. I think that's an identified gap here that we don't feel like we're getting enough communication, or families don't feel like they're getting enough communication from us about what that could look like. And I'm sure I'm overgeneralizing that some, but I think it's kind of obvious from the charts a little bit. And then how well do we feel like the Chromebook practice is working? I thought this was an interesting one too, just as far as how it matched up with some of their other concerns, but then we had a lot of respondents that said they felt it was working extremely well, but you can tell the large number of that, high school chunk, right? And so that probably makes a lot of intuitive sense on the flip side of that for a high school, yeah, it probably works pretty well. They need access to a device pretty routinely to complete a lot of their work. And then we see smaller numbers, when we get to the elementary and middle school. Which of the following screen time practices would you support? We're kind of all over the board here a little bit, but I think what is maybe the most consistent thing to look at is there's support for reconsideration, right, of them. And so I think trying to get as the end of the slide deck shows, a committee together to make some recommendations is really the thing. I think people, and I think that's where we all struggle with this a little bit, is we know there probably needs to be something different, but what does that change exactly look like? And it's probably multifaceted. It's not a single solution, but you do see a lot of different respondents choose some different things there about, you know, what they would like to see, whether it's from AI or just considering the one-to-one approach in general. And then what's working well, you see some pretty consistent themes here. Again, some overlap between the staff results and the family results, kind of thinking about that first one with access, equity, and convenience. The seamlessness that's created with homework and communication, some of those things are of benefit. They like the access to digital literacy skills, and the school district's helping them with that, and their classroom teacher in school is helping them with that. They'd like preference to be on school-based use and balanced screen time, so trying to limit that amount of screen time at school, but also some balanced use there, keeping it tied more to the school, so then, you know, parents can have those consistent expectations at home. And then the personalized learning aspect that we've touched on before. Pieces that aren't working, again, common talking point for us, excessive screen time and developmental concerns. Some preference for more traditional learning and reduced technology dependence. You know, what are those things that we need to still make sure are happening in traditional fashion? You see things like handwriting mentioned here, and the peer-to-peer interaction that's not happening through a screen. Those are highly important skills for our kids to still develop. A lot of distractions, gaming, YouTube. Director Lingo, I think about, you know, a time we've been talking about this, and you talked about how many, it was like a data point you had about how many like vibrations you get in the middle of a class period or a meeting, right? And just, even if you don't pull out your phone, but you know, my pocket's vibrating here, how it distracts me from what we need to be doing. And so just that constant, I would say, draw to that students experience, even if they're on their device doing a task, than if they're getting notifications for something else, and how that's disrupting. So that's a drawback. Lack of communication, transparency, and parental controls. So again, back to our communication theme, do parents understand all the controls? Do they know how to use them? Do we have sufficient controls on campus? And then the concerns about learning quality, AI, and digital learning programs. The suggestions they have on the next slide, talking about, again, reducing screen time elementary-wise. The differentiation by grade level, I think that's an important one for us to consider when we look at it. It doesn't have to be the one-size-fits-all as they travel through our PK-12 experience. Use it as a tool, not the primary method. AI popped up, you know, several times through here. I think that's new to all of us, and working to, you know, figure out what the right balance in the use of that tool or suite of tools will be. Continue to increase transparency and parent involvement, and then follow the research and evidence. And I remember the last meeting, I think we touched on phones. I think I had mentioned that we know what the research says now, right? I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of that. And at the time when a lot of these tools were incorporated, it was unclear about that. And I think there was hopeful ideas about what the benefit could be. And today we know more, right? And so if we know more, we have to do better in that regard. And we have to keep following what that shows us, and have the courage to take those steps. So the next steps that we're recommending off of this is that we structure a committee made up of district and building staff along with community members to guide some next steps. Really see that committee meeting throughout the year, next year, and really evaluate and recommend some evidence-based guidelines for screen time, balancing a lot of those things you heard in the results of the survey there with ed benefits, student well-being, and healthy development. And so the focus right now, you know, for things that we've thought through with that could be to evaluate and modify those guidelines for tech use, reevaluate our current practices, determine what changes are necessary, basically on device deployment. You know, what does that look like? And right now we had purchased a device for every student. Well, we might have that many devices, but then what does the deployment mechanism look like for that? And determine a timeline for those changes, and then any other recommendations you have that you'd want included as a focus of that committee too. So I try not to talk too long and try not to just rush through it either, but that slide deck's been up there, and I'm sure you had a chance to look at it. So I wanted to hit the high points and kind of tell you the next steps and see if we were on the same page to move forward on that.
Thank you. I open it up for questions, comments. Go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you for this. I am really happy to have this data to start from. A couple of questions that I had specifically about the committee and the way it could work. I know it's not a thing yet. And I am happy to see that the intent is to have representation on that committee from, you know, a wide variety of people and roles. I am curious if there will be a similar, it probably wouldn't be exactly similar, but an application process, or how, is there a vision for how to identify people to be participants in that committee? I know it's a commitment, and you're envisioning it meeting through the year probably.
Yeah, I think a good portion of the year, we want to have some recommendations back to you in time to make changes, right, for the following year. So probably not the whole year, but culminating sometime, late winter, early spring, so that those recommendations could be implemented for the following school year. We've had community members as part of our technology committee before, and so I think we'd go back to look at how those members were selected. I think we'd be open to a process, where people could volunteer to be on there. Probably won't be something as formalized, right, of course, as you guys talked about tonight, but I do think we need a sound process around it where the people that are interested could be considered, evaluated, and selected. I mean, we could even connect this to some board policy. Board policy has different types of committees and how those are formed and selected, and so it might make sense that we just link that to a policy piece, and it's most likely I forget the correct terminology. I think is it referenced as ad hoc committee for a period of time that meets and then will dissolve after a while. It's not something we'd probably see continuing, that district tech committee would continue on, but this one would be a smaller vehicle to make some short-term changes and recommendations.
Yeah, we have some really engaged community members around this that I would love to see their input on it. Another consideration I just want to put out there is that I know that as part of our budget cuts, one of the things that we have done is to cut different tech tools, and I know that reduce access to them or whatever. And I know that some of our teachers have expressed concern about not having access to certain tools that help them identify, plagiarism and those kinds of things when students are using technology. And so I am wondering where the intersection is to be able to, I know that the screen time issue is not exactly that, but this is a related issue. And I don't have the answer, but I would just like to see some consideration of how to connect those concerns, essentially. How do we help our students be the healthiest and get the best learning experience, but then also help our teachers have the tools needed to manage in that world with digital world. So,
Yeah, I think it's kind of included in that first bullet point in some way, Director Horn-Fraser, about evaluate and modify guidelines for ed tech use. That's kind of staff and students, right? And so student use, and then, what guidelines do we want to have in place for staff, right? And what tools do they need? Because I think you're right. I think it's all part of this work about what tools do they need to be successful, and then what tools did we also evaluate and say, these are really expensive. Is there a cheaper way we can accomplish this goal?
Maybe there is, maybe there isn't.
Yeah, but it may not be popular with staff either, right? Because they might have put a lot of time investment into one tool right now, and if we make a switch to something else for a monetary or other reason, right? I mean, that's uncomfortable for staff then to have to move all their work. But I think that's part of the conversation, and I think part of what we're looking at there with guidelines for ed tech use. We kind of think about guidelines right away about how we restrict maybe students a little bit, but it's also best practice guidelines for staff, and then support they need to be able to meet those guidelines, and monitoring tools would be an example of that.
So I have just one more point.
Yep.
This is an issue that I think a lot about. And so the last thing that I want to just say is that when I'm looking at this screen that's up there right now, I think it's great to have some clear statement of the mission of the committee, and to have some ideas about the activity that committee could engage in or recommend or results of that. But what I see as really critical and not explicitly represented on this screen is the idea of getting really clear about what the outcomes are we're seeking, because I think where a lot of these concerns, like the impetus behind having the survey in the first place, came from developing research and developing awareness of the research around negative impact of a lot of these tools, and how our students are not actually achieving what we want them to achieve by having such integration of these tools into their daily academic life. And so my hope is that, and furthermore, it was a years-long thing for us to change our academic processes to incorporate all of these tech tools. So it's going to be a years-long effort to, again, shift. And so I want to acknowledge that, like, if we're going to do it well, I think it's going to take time, and I just want to be sort of mentally prepared for the fact that if we're going to do it well, it is going to take time. And, you know, maybe the first year it's a small change in practice relatively, and then it just builds, you know, from year to year. I don't know, but I just, I think it's so important. I'm so glad we're engaging in this, but it's going to be an undertaking.
Yeah, and it can be a multi-year roadmap, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you might not be able to accomplish everything in the first year, so what's your goals for the first year? And then goals, you know, years 1 to 3, something in that time frame. I think you also had a good point about, you know, what outcomes are you looking for from this? Is there a board goal, or is there some goals, you know, that you want us to consider? Otherwise, some of those guiding principles are kind of the themes, you know, that we see from the survey results. But if there's further input or direction from the board about where they want some of these things to land, you know, I think that's an important probably thought point, you know, for tonight. And if that's a conversation we need to come back to with the board before we sit down with that committee to say, hey, these are, you know, definite board goals of things we want to achieve, that provides great direction to the committee to kind of understand what box they're working in.
And how do you even measure things like improved concentration or,
Yeah.
you know, deepening interpersonal like connections? Like, yeah, so I think it's a lot to think through. But thank you very much for this presentation.
Thank you for this presentation, Matt.
Just grab my pen.
I agree with Director Horn-Fraser that this is going to take some time to make these adjustments, and that it would behoove us to have some defined goals that we're working for. I think most everyone agrees that we need to take on a more balanced approach when we're talking about tech. And when you talk about reconsidering the one-to-one model, I am hearing from so many teachers concerns about, you know, the devices going home and getting damaged, and the desire to bring back the carts. So I'll just put those two things out there, because those are two things that I keep hearing over and over again from building personnel and teachers. And I'm really glad that you brought up the parallel to the cell phone policy, because when we put that in place, we had really boundaried, you know, well-defined rules and consequences. And it was, you know, it was difficult for the buildings to enforce those rules. But within 6 weeks, you know, 6 weeks is how long it takes to make a habit, right?
Yep.
We were seeing the office referrals, you know, leveling out and plateauing. So, you know, that those clear expectations and consequences, and just that accountability is so important for shaping behavior and culture. So, you know, it seems like that's not something that we currently do for the inappropriate use, for the videos, for the gaming, and maybe that's something that isn't going to take a year, a committee a year to decide. That maybe that's something that we can put together a little bit quicker, so that we have something in place even for this next school year.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, Director Finch. I'd want to spend some time with that. My first reaction, that would be a lot of that intersects maybe with other, you know, disciplinary protocols we have, but I do wonder if there's a way we could even expand on that, right? I mean, if we want this to be a focus, like, you know, what does our CBA say about inappropriate tech use, and how extensive is that, or is there a way to build that out some more? And so that could even be, like you said, an initial outcome of this is, okay, well, do we have really clear expectations about this? Is like misuse of Chromebook or some, is it outlined in there like our cell phone stuff would be? So we could definitely look at that.
Thank you for the presentation. I just had a quick question. I know that you will form a committee in order to make recommendations to the board, but this would not stop individual buildings from piloting certain programs that they know or recognize would probably be helpful for their building. For example, if a building decided that they wanted to set the rule that no Chromebooks in a lunchroom,
Right.
they can proceed with that.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, we would just communicate with them and talk. A lot of times they'd reach out for how we implement this or talk to us about their plans for how they'd like to go about that, but they could certainly do that before. Another reference point to our cell phone policy, most of what we adopted was what Liberty High School was doing, right? And so they had kind of already had that approach to their building, and then we made a pretty closely aligned district approach to theirs, so.
Yeah, I mean, one building, I know just from visiting with them, Southeast will be looking at
At lunchtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rolling out some different changes based on what they have seen regarding student behaviors and activities, especially in the lunchroom, cafeteria.
Just
Sorry,
I'll let
go
you
ahead.
finish. You
No,
finish
I was
your
just
thought.
gonna say, we'd be supportive of that, so, yeah.
And one of the things I think is important is just kind of to put out the context of, like, in secondary, you have 46-minute class periods and seven of them a day. So, I mean, if you look at as we go through the list, 60 minutes of screen time, our computer time is 20% of the classroom day. 120 minutes is 37%. 3 hours or 180 minutes is 56%. So it's one of those things that, yeah, I understand, like the computer science classroom, right? They're going to be in there in front of them. So it's like, when you approach secondary, I think a lot of this has to be nuanced with the curricular area, and I think probably similar with elementary school. I know you probably don't have the answer to this, and Liza's not here, but I would like to know a little bit more about the elementary with 30% of the teacher respondents reporting that I believe it was 30, let me double check. 28.3% don't know how much time their children are spending on a Chromebook during the day. If that's just like, well, differs from day to day kind of answer or not. Just trying to get a better idea of that, because I know there have been a few comments out in the community. I can tell you, I answered for elementary parent survey. I don't know how much time my child spends on a computer. I can guess, but because the way Securely is made, I can see what my child opens, what they look at, but I can't have any sort of idea of how much time they spend on it. So it's like, well, but if I have a third grader or a fourth, I don't even know about third grader. I don't know what they're like yet. Well, I know what they're like, but maybe when my child's in 5th grade, I can get a pretty good idea of how much time she can tell me that she spends on a computer in a day. So I think that is probably what you may be seeing in the elementary parent survey, where if you don't know, you don't know.
Even if they're using Securely, it might not be accurate, or
it
might not really tell you the information. I think we've tried to even pull that data for you guys before and stated some limitations with that about if we're looking at that data through Clever or through Securely, and how it's not the best data set, so.
I think part of the movement is that we will have to have whatever ISB policy primer on technology. So I don't know and Eliza's not here to ask, but to work on that during the summer, how to get some of those elementary teachers that are on the higher side of 17% are what listed more than 1 hour, ready for how to implement a classroom this fall with an hour or less. And then I kept on seeing on digital literacy, and I know we've had a couple comments on this. Do we teach typing any longer? Because that's one of the things that it said in digital literacy is learning to type. What kind of...
Yeah, when I started at Southeast, we had actual typing. That was the name
Yeah.
of the class. And then we incorporated it into another course. And so I think the honest assessment is there. It's probably hit or miss about if it's still a part of a curriculum of a course at middle school. Again, I think some of the instruction that would happen in elementary would have some lessons on it, but I think that would be one of those about how consistent are we doing it across the board? How routine is it? Is it cyclical? Do we have these definite stages? So that was one I'd be hesitant to answer that we're doing that with great consistency.
So I'd still like us to look into that. I'm not saying create a bunch of typing classes, but it's still a skill that's needed even if we have voice to text. at some point here. And, you know, the one that I continue to hear over and over again, and I think it's on the list for things that bother, just YouTube, and how much feedback I get on please get rid of it from parents and community members because of just the amount of distraction that's there. It's kind of like I give my child the cell phone to watch a show. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the most perfect parent. I don't think any of us are. But you know, it's like if I put her on YouTube, it's game off. Like it's gonna be a hard thing to pull away from her. It's because it's built to hook kids on there. That's just the way the algorithm works. And you know, when I hear parents talk about, you know, my child's on their YouTube, I see it and I turn it off when they get home, but once they get to school, it's a problem. And you know, I know you probably don't have a perfect answer to that, but it's one that comes up time and time again for distraction.
I just want to, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
add a piece of information. So I just learned from an audience member that keyboarding is offered at Southeast. So I would imagine that it's offered at our other middle schools as an elective. So,
Thank you.
I think when we did thanks for saying that, because when we did those middle school, when we obviously started middle school, I think we had I don't think it's required anymore.
No, it's an elective.
Yeah, it's an option, yeah. Back to the YouTube, I think we made some good progress on that at the end of the year, at least for the elementary level too. So we'll come back with that.
And then the last one that I'll say, and I may have said that before, but just piggybacking on the idea of some of the behaviors things. I mean, when you give a student a Chromebook, it becomes theirs on a one-to-one. It's ownership, right? So if you as a teacher or an administrator try to take that away, you're taking away something that are shutting it down or turning it off. It's like one of those things that you're taking ownership away from a student. And when anybody that's spent 5 minutes in a classroom knows what it's like, if you take that item that is a distraction of the student away, you're taking something that is their property. Whether it's metaphorical property in this case, because they don't own it, the school does, but it's still theirs, right?
Feels like it's theirs.
Yeah, so so I think when we talk about secondary and carts, at least middle school, I don't know where we're at on high school, but some of the upper elementary and secondary, having carts takes a little bit of that ownership away, because then the student doesn't come into the classroom with their Chromebook, whips it out, teacher has to say, put your Chromebook away, student's like, well, you know, that kind of.
I think we could get really quick movement on the idea of carts at the middle school. I'll tell you, I think the biggest hang up now is just gonna be the expense of those carts. It was really expensive to do it for the one grade level. They aren't insignificant, and so it also just makes me think we might need to do some further investigation. I know we had talked real briefly about trying to offload some devices. You know, could you offload some devices to purchase some carts to do a different model? I think that's just part of the equation. But I think for middle schools, and I wouldn't want to speak for every staff member, but I think we could get some pretty quick movement about looking at that device deployment model differently.
And I don't mean this tongue in cheek when I say it, but if you can barter some of the Chromebooks or for the cash value and then be like, well, can we buy a used cart, something like that?
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going.
any additional comments or questions? All right, thank you so much for the presentation. Next up, that takes us to our action item for tonight, which is the acceptance of the fiscal year 24 audit report. If board members don't have additional questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
I move we accept the FY '24 audit report.
Second.
Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. And that takes us to agenda setting. I know we discussed some additional meetings at the meeting tonight, so those would not be listed. But the first one would be a closed session tomorrow starting at 5 o'clock. And then our regular board meeting scheduled for July 28th and not the 21st, just because it was listed incorrectly in some of our documents, but it should be July 28th. And you see some of our standing items. And so it's kind of hard to figure out what to put next because we'll have a different superintendent and try and work with them on getting them up and running to provide any additional items to that. But I think we still contrive. So if there's things that board members would like to see on this meeting, feel free to open it up for discussion. I know we'll have our financial oversight committee probably finalized and we can report that out.
One thing to change is under discussion items, we take out the word interim to chief financial officer. Oh, no, that's her final report.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if we can start to get some sort of, to go with the SBRC to add in,
Yes.
I don't know if it's but the monthly statements and
Yeah.
then just a
Yep,
a
so in
report
addition
from
to
Pat.
the interim, we
Yep.
will have the CFO.
I have a question about, I know that we have talked about the need to reevaluate the FMP, like just, and start to look at where we are with the capital funds and how we're going to proceed with the things that are on hold. And so I have more of a question about how we'll start that conversation rather than.
Rather than if we could start it on July 28th.
Yes, I'm not sure if that is something that requires a work session or some other reporting first, and then we can, I don't know.
I think it would be best to delay that after the past couple meetings with the state and until we get on financial track and our financial things are where they need to be and at the very least, the resolution, the facilities master plan resolution metrics are met.
Yeah, so just maybe to keep it kind of in front of us. I'm wondering if there is a way to incorporate some of those metrics then into the monthly reporting that we receive so that we can be kind of gauging our progress toward the point at which we can restart those conversations.
Were we going to get a report or a set of recommendations about proceeding with capital projects?
Not, I believe because we passed the resolution.
Right, yeah.
That was paused. I don't recall what you're asking, Director Eastham.
Yeah, I mean, in the resolution, you guys had, there's several things that the team would need to accomplish and then also have prepared to present to you, before that would be ready. A starting point, kind of following up on Director Horn-Fraser and Director Lingo's exchange there, you do have a placeholder on that operations lifecycle budget. Remember, part of really what was shown in that capital is, okay, what's that operations lifecycle going to look like? So that might make sense to just start right there, and then, those other things continue to, you work through the FY25 audit and accomplish some of that work, and then the appropriate team at the time can present back, pieces that would be incorporated in that resolution.
And so my question would be, I know it's operation life cycle is listed as an action item, but shouldn't it be listed as a presentation as well or a discussion item?
Usually it's presented to you as a budget and ask for your support on it. You can list it however you would like to. If you'd like to have a discussion first and then as an action, or if you'd only want to take it as a discussion. Kurt's obviously not here this evening, but I don't think it's time sensitive that has to happen July 28th. I mean,
I can follow up with Kurt, but I would personally like to see it listed somewhere else just in case something comes up and board members would want to table it versus getting into the action item, having that discussion and saying, let's not move forward.
I'm fine with that.
Anything else from directors? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Somebody got a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.